Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Byer. Hi, Dave. For this one, we should have had like dumb glasses and hats.
I just feel like we're in different seasons because I'm in shorts and short sleeves and you're in layers and it's warm outside.
I'm not ready for summer weight, so I'm protecting myself.
Oh, I just saw you. This and that. We are going to be discussing the 2023 ISU World Team Trophy and everything else going on in figure skating this week. So if you're new here, please subscribe below and smash that like button. I'm a little under the weather if you can't hear it. I've been for a couple days. So, and Jonathan, I'm not good at being sick. I'm just going to let you know.
You strike me as thriving when you're achieving, and it's harder to achieve things sometimes when you're feeling under the weather.
It's just like such a weird week to be sick because I would have normally been competing at adult nationals and I'm not this year, dealing with some personal things. So I haven't been and like, oh God, like when you were, yeah.
Well, and for me, the season change always throws my sinuses out of whack.
But that's the thing is that like, I'm doing a lot of things to fix my posture. I have, first of all, I text too much ergonomically, right? Like how I sit, working on that. And I've always had, there's scoliosis in my family. So I'm really working on my posture this year. And I've done it for a while because I've had different injuries and issues. So I've really been like focusing on it. And I wound up going back to the chiropractor because I have a problem with the nerve in the back, which also affects this shoulder, which affects things with skating and life. And he was like, well, I don't know if you're sick or if it's just like massive inflammation because of the allergies, but one way or another, I haven't really had a fever, but I have been knocked out and it's like hurt to walk. So it's either global warming is doing like a real number on us with the change of the seasons, just
I see an ice dance program about that. So I would agree with you.
A couple, right? About how it like goes from 50 to 80 and everything's blooming and either that or I've been run down. I mean, I had busy stuff for work recording this week in my other life. So yeah, it's just been crazy, but yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, okay.
But also we want to congratulate all of the competitors of adult nationals, and Michael Solanowski won his title back in the seniors, which is really becoming more competitive where some of the former competitors go back. He was against JY Soon, Daniel Palmieri, and it was funny because he messaged me and he goes, I'm way more nervous for this than I should be. But I think with anything, it's the amount of work that you put into it, that it becomes a thing.
How much is on the line, yeah. And that was always my thing. Sometimes like in preparing for things, I would almost under-prepare, so I took the pressure off in some weird self-sabotaging way.
Like those were more triples now than he landed when he last competed at senior nationals for the US men. So I think I understand why.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, congratulations to everyone and seeing all of those pictures and yeah, it's been, and Brooke Tufts, our solo dancer.
Yeah, sorry, I just noticed. I got rose hair. This is really important. We're like talking about adult nationals, and I was like, you're going crazy. You look like the flying nun. Okay, sorry.
No, Brooke Tufts, is starting her solo dance season, and they're starting to have international competitions, and a judge messaged me saying that her free dance was the most perfect thing she's ever seen. So
I have no doubt every time I see her, I think that I feel.
Well, I posted her like first warm-up competition on the channel, and then she has a new dress and, she's been improving a lot. She was injured when she competed at nationals last year. There were like 3 or 4 people in our rink who all had lace bite, and she had it really bad at the same time. So I remember Kristen said, I don't know, get a shot in your foot, get a shot in your head. I don't know, you have nationals coming up. So, she's just, listen, some people do well with Kristen's, icy approach,
I would not personally.
I actually do. You'd be surprised. It's interesting when you have someone who's just direct. She's not mean. She's just.
Yeah, it almost takes the emotion out of it, I suppose. Yeah.
She's just like a caller. She's just like the personality of a technical specialist. Okay. Yes.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, lots going on. I don't know if you noticed that Darьya Usacheva did a triple flip this week on Instagram. And okay, they're posted on Telegram. I post, when stuff comes up, I try to post things on our YouTube channel so that people see it, so that they have an opportunity if they're not on those, social media outlets. And why I think this is interesting, it's not a commentary on the Russian flip technique, which you can listen to the interview with Linda to discuss, right? Terry just told us that she couldn't jump and that she was trying ice dance with Dario Scherzano, but that he needed a partner who had more experience. And she needed an ice dance partner who she could learn with. And then we see her doing a triple flip. So I obviously don't think that she's going to be back in the Russian Cup where they're doing quads. Are they going to shop her out to the country that is the highest bidder? That is what I'm wondering, Jonathan, because remember, we're watching this team event. We're seeing that they brought up the junior dance team from Korea to be a senior. We see that Italy is in the mix. There were rumors about Maya Humik going to Italy. We see Daniel Grassel. Is Darya Usacheva going to a country next? Is she going to be Hungarian? Is she going to be Italian? But I just think it's interesting that we see her doing this triple flip. Like, yes, there are shows in Russia, but it's just curious, like just something to keep your eye on, like the side.
Well, what's interesting is I always liked Daria one of the most out of that camp. She had like a really lovely edge quality. She was always much nicer to watch for me than many of her teammates. Mm-hmm. So actually for me, the ice dance idea was kind of ideal. Mm-hmm. I was sort of hopeful about that, mm-hmm. but to now find out she's jumping again and sort of selling it as such, I'm confused by that, because I thought actually she would be someone who could make that transition mm-hmm. nicely.
I think, I mean, it takes a couple years when you're transitioning in any discipline, but intrigued by what is happening here. Just, you know, with all of this stuff with the IOC, and I think in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be so much discussion about, are they coming back as neutrals? I mean, it's been reported that the ISU will decide on whether or not Russians can compete next year in June or October. Now that's a big or, Jonathan. And why do you think that or is?
One would set the tone for the Grand Prix, and one just leaves a giant question mark. Yeah.
Or for Worlds next year.
Right.
And is this about punishment, or is this about taking the temperature of the public?
Do you think they care about the temperature of the public?
To a point.
Okay.
It's like risk adjustment, right? Like how risk averse are you, right? Yeah. And what is that going to be? But we already saw that the ISU brought Lekernik to major competitions as a guest. So, and we already saw, you know, so many Russian coaches at Worlds. So you have to kind of wonder how banned people are and if this is just kind of biding time. Right? Yeah. So, and if they are coming
in that group, none appeared, as far as I could tell, at World Team Trophy, despite them having skaters there.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's, yeah. So, and who knows, you know, how this is done with the organizers. Is this a TV? You know, everyone's flying people in and out, and people are on vacation, because we didn't see Marie France. She's likely, remember, she was going to take a yoga retreat one year, you know, needing that rest, because they have a lot of programs to make. And I think what's so interesting is that, especially for the younger levels, that next season has already been starting, right? Like this season isn't over yet. Brooke's competing in solo dance, right? Like those younger, the junior ice dancers that I train with, you know, they're several months into their program development and training and for next season. So it's a funny window of time, right? Like this is the end of season for here. Everyone else is starting to plan their programs, think of music, but the ISU hasn't actually released the rules yet for that senior rhythm dance. So what the 80s means and how this is all going to work is not finalized yet. So that everybody is waiting to see, you know, what are those rules going to be like? So it's just like a really weird time, and funny how this happens, right? In
especially this is one, and the skating was wonderful, like supportive always of all these people just giving out their best work. For me as a fan and a viewer, this felt like the end of a long season. Like by the time we got to World Trophy here, I was like, oof, even coming on the show, then I was like, I'm ready for new programs. I'm ready.
I am too, but I have to say, I feel a little invigorated, and I don't know if it's just me personally, because I felt very tired throughout times of this season and frustrated. For me, because Four Continents was, to me, one of the worst figure skating events I've ever seen, followed by Junior Worlds, where I really think the direction of some of the rules needs to be changed for the development of the future of the sport. I thought it was interesting that because usually in the past, there's been a little bit of a rivalry setup between Four Continents and Worlds, almost like a preview, which I find builds interest, right? I remember years where Kim Yuna in 2009, like nailed Four Continents. Mao in 2008 had one of her best performances along with Daisuke, right? And that really previewed what was going to happen at the World Championships. And, you know, it didn't happen for Daisuke that year. It did for Mao. It did for Yuna the next year. We also saw like the rise of Joanne Rochette. And I find that's interesting, that like tit for tat, right? Yeah. But I think because we didn't have Four Continents, I don't think it gave Worlds the momentum that we had Four Continents, but we didn't have Four Continents, right?
And it was a limited roster and the people there weren't putting out their best output. Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting. And, you know, when we talk about the events, I had a few things I want to touch on. But I think it's interesting that we get to see now, because earlier in the season, we talked about how it's going to take time for rivalries to establish, right? To just grow organically. And you really can't force it. I think I was hoping that it would happen by Four Continents and Worlds. It took a little longer, but I think you can start to see now the storylines for next year, which are actually quite exciting.
Yes.
Where we now have Haein Lee against Kaori Sakamoto, and that gets into that Japan and Korea rivalry, which is a natural political rivalry, even though the skaters seem fine with each other, but you see Haein training the triple axel here at the World Team Trophy. That's a natural competitiveness between two skaters that's now getting interesting. Like we're having flip-flops. Kaori didn't skate her best here, right? But that's an interesting dynamic. We see in the pairs a flip-flop of the World Championships, right? They just competed. Now we see Alexa and Brandon beating Ryuichi.
Yeah.
And you also see in the men's event that Junhwan Cha is really solidifying himself as a, you know, class A, grade A competitor.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. And that's something that has happened organically throughout the season. Thank goodness it did, to go into next year, because there weren't any stars really at the start of this season.
Well, it's interesting to have this somewhat close to Worlds and see each person's different sort of emotional response to Worlds. Like, how are you riding what happened at Worlds, good or bad, into this event? And you saw some people take ownership of that spotlight. They had a successful Worlds. Kevin, Haein, am I pronouncing that right?
Haein.
Sorry.
We're going to learn this name.
Yes, of course, because people all give us different information on it.
It's really hard when you get, you know, it written out phonetically, because everyone writes and sounds how I would write it to explain is different how you would. Yeah.
Right, of course. But her, Ms. Lee, and then Junhwan Cha, and Kevin, maybe I already mentioned him. Those were people that had successful Worlds that, to me, then stepped into the spotlight as a leading skater here.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool to see that in just a brief period of time from one successful event, these people sort of have a different air about them. And then on the flip side, you saw some people who they look tired.
Well, you know what it reminded me of, and having competed sometimes and even done, have you ever get the end of a really rough season, right? But you're at an event, or maybe you're competing at the nationals, right? Or doing a production, right? And after you've slogged and gotten ready and gone through that grind, but sometimes you leave a production tired and ready for it to end. And sometimes you leave it just motivated, right? Like you have this second wind that you didn't know that you had. And I think we could see for certain skaters like a Kevin Aymoz, it happened here rather than that drop off. So I think that's Matteo Rizzo. I think that's wonderful to see. And that's
and quite frankly, Yelim Kim, that was an important moment, I think, for her to have had that free skate at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to ask, how did you watch this? Because I want to talk about figure skating and why it is so important to where it is and how it's seen in the current media landscape.
So I did watch on Peacock, NBC app, and they were doing it just by day. So they had day 1, day 2, day 3. So each clip was like a 5-hour clip. Now I watch on Apple TV, so it also means I have that stupid remote where you have to like slide on the top, and it becomes at times a very frustrating way to do it because I'm like kind of scrolling over and now I've skipped like 20 minutes by mistake. It would be so much more helpful for me. First of all, they don't even categorize figure skating as one of the thumbnail sports anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's not like there's a winter or Olympic sport category that then helps me bring me to the skating. I'm like, digging through a million, Premier League games in order to actually find the skating replays. And then of course I have the anxiety about watching it fast enough. However, these replays seem to stay up longer than others did. It was over 24 hours, it seemed to me. Of course, no commentary. But even if there was a way within the video to help me organize it by discipline or even skater, it would be so helpful in just kind of getting it. Of course, no commentary, which is for me fine. Although, as we were discussing before we came on the air, having a Belinda Marks situation would have been dreamy here.
I find that the two of them together add something to the event that was missing from the World Team Trophy. Just in terms, I think both have more broadcast experience on real television than Ted does, right? And I think that it just adds a certain level of excitement.
And they're not afraid to make interesting observations that are not just fluff that we don't need them to tell us. It's insight. And so it becomes a more interesting conversation when they draw our attention to certain specific qualities, good or bad.
And I think they were good at the World Championships and they didn't have experience together prior to that, right? So the more they work together, the better they will become.
I think that's the dream team for me as a fan. Yeah.
But I wanted to say, because one of the reasons I know Belinda's commentary so well has to do with how the YouTube algorithm works, which is why blocking everything on YouTube is so bad for the sport ultimately. And this recast thing that the ISU is considering is really short-sighted. Because one of the major aspects of YouTube that can help actually grow the sport, if someone puts on figure skating, is the recommended videos and what it auto plays when something finishes, right? And the reason I go back to is, do you ever fall asleep at night watching something on your laptop and like wake up and have to turn it off? Which my mom yells at me for, the laptop could fall on the, the whole thing, right? Okay. But YouTube will autoplay something. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep at night watching, a show, documentary, whatever. And they, YouTube knows that I've watched skating, so it puts on skating and it puts on what it thinks she'll like. And it always puts on the Olympics of one of the time. I think I've woken up to an Austrian or German pair skating at the Olympics so many times and hearing Belinda's voice because YouTube is autoplaying. Which means that when we have these World Team Trophies and these World Championships and they have those long broadcasts, one of the ways that videos get to the top on YouTube is watch time, right? So that's why that Olympic video that is 4 hours will get to the top because of the amount of watch time and average viewer length, and that promotes the video higher in the algorithm, along with comments and people debating. So if people think that someone's robbed, oh my God, and they're fighting with each other in the comments, it just boosts it to the top, right? It's giving YouTube all the signals that this is a video people want to see. But that also promotes the sport, right? Because you're also not just competing against other skating videos. I'm competing for Jonathan Byer's attention, right? So if you log into YouTube or you're
Get in line, Dave. No, I'm just kidding.
I also know that you like opera. I also know that you like, to watch sitcoms or clips of that, right? Oh. So it could be competing on each person is personalized, right? In your YouTube screen. So it would be competing for your attention with funny clips of South Park or Family Guy or, drag.
Right in there. Yeah.
And it is fighting to see what you're going to click on, and your choices every time are taken into account in an algorithm. So the more that figure skating is there and put in, the more that it can actually have a chance to hook into you as a viewer and grow attention. And that's how the sport can grow in the current algorithm. So anyway, moving to recast is detrimental because if you are not on the right-hand side of a recommended video for you to click on or on your screen or coming in, it doesn't exist, right? The same way as if figure skating doesn't have a tab or winter sports don't have a tab when you go into Peacock, they don't exist, right? And
don't worry, Dave. Speed skating had its own thumbnail in Peacock, and I was like, this is as infuriating as sometimes the ISU page, because I subscribe to the ISU channel on YouTube. Primarily, I'm getting speed skating videos nonstop, and it's just bonkers. Again, as avid fans that are searching and it's difficult, I find no reason to believe that anyone will happen upon it and discover it and enjoy it newly. Yeah.
Anyway, I work on this in my real life as well, but just kinds of things, like it's just infuriating when you're like, yeah, you're making 5 cents and you're going to lose.
Well, it's penny smart, dollar stupid. I mean, that sort of seems to be a lot of the decisions being made.
Yeah. And I think
the idea of them trying to protect the NBC broadcasts themselves, again, I find it very hard to believe that a lot of people are just discovering it on NBC for the first time these days. Because again, a lot of people that just have network television on and running in the background is not like it was.
Well, yesterday, the NCAA Gymnastics Championships were on ABC. They got that there, which they've tested by having success on ESPN and the streaming, subsidiaries of ESPN. But fans post those entire broadcasts onto YouTube. Now, ESPN could choose to be like NBC and like take them, right? Get that taken off, like we saw with US Nationals, right? But they don't. Because they know that if people watch those, not everyone can watch something live, right? There's only so much time.
Especially internationally, come on,
we live in a world where we don't usually watch things live anymore. That's not our lifestyle, right? It's no longer, we just live differently than we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So if you're not watching it live and you don't have the 48-hour window, but you still want to watch it, right? But with figure skating, it's not there. And the World Team Trophy, I'm sorry, is not something that you're going to rearrange your life for. You might want to see a clip of something, right? But if it gets taken down and it doesn't happen, it's like it never exists. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, did it even fall, Jonathan? Okay, that's what happens in this landscape, right? And they need to keep that out there so that someone can catch up on the World Team Trophy over the next 2 weeks.
And then sometimes it's easier. I will just check in with like skating scores. I'll just read almost what happened based on the judges' PDF instead of experience it or adding my hours of viewership to it.
But all of this compounds, right? All of this has to do with why the stands are empty, right? Like it all affects each other. So you have to really be thinking broadly from all angles. Anyway, rant is done for the day, but also 2 things before we get in here. When did Alyona Kosternaya and Georgi Kunitsa did side-by-side triple flip. Now we're still, and we saw that they can do, I think-
triple loop, was it, right?
We saw the triple twist off the ice. This is interesting because they're gonna have to get the real pair elements. They're showing us the single skaters. Now the twist is very difficult to get, but we have to see the death spirals and the lifts, right? Megan and Deanna would be in our ears being like, yes, that's very nice, but this is smoke and mirrors, right? But we do see that there is progression, and I think this is a multi-year project, but
I think it's also the statement, like, they're really gonna try this. Yes, it's like showing off the elements, but I think it's also just confirming for me that like she's really, as opposed to, for instance, this will Usacheva make a transition or not, she's showing she's really going to do this.
Well, it's like Usacheva now, she could be a novice lady in another country, right? But we're now seeing with Kosternaya and Kunitsa. Interesting. I was skeptical, mostly because of her health and her injuries over the last years and doing pairs, which is difficult to learn, right? You think about how many broken wrists she's had and things like that, but now watching and seeing that this is becoming more and more legitimate, interesting to see, right? Like becoming more of a believer and less of a skeptic by the day.
Yeah.
So interesting to watch, right? Just, yeah. The other thing is that we don't know what will happen with Russia next year, but they are making organized moves where Julien, who made some disgusting comments this week that
endlessly this week, yeah.
Which people on Twitter did not understand and were attacking, like, oh God. So anyway, he said horrible things about Adam Rippon for no reason, right? Because Adam supported the Russia ban. He went for transphobic remarks, right?
Yeah.
Because that
the one that said who even needs Ukraine or something like that.
And also said that as well, yes. So going to have someone on the show this week who, has some views on that. But we know that Stepanova and Bukin are training with him. They've both had children over the last time period since we've seen them compete. And then Hudar Bedieva and Bazin moved there.
I saw that, yeah.
I was helping a Russian journalism student with a paper that they're doing for graduation. And they said that there's a joke in Russia that Bagin, Bazin, and Bukin are with Julien, and they're all going to skate to Rachmaninoff. So it's great.
But probably a remixed version in the middle. Yeah. As long as my team stays with Krylova.
Yes.
That's what I need. That's, as I saw even the announcement, or like the headline of the thing that, dancers moving to Julien, I thought, please do not let it be Angopol. And I was like, I cannot handle that.
No, I think that team is really in the best position to keep moving forward, right? You have a change, Sabata Bukin coming back. We don't know what they look like. We haven't heard anything about Annabelle Morozov and her new partner, right? Like that's been very quiet. In the past, she was posting pictures with her partner for last season. So, and we know that Diana and Gleb are supposed to do a show in June, but that's been very quiet, right? What's happening there. And you start to wonder, are they going to go back to Russia? Because what would that be like politically if you don't
show? Waiting for June or September. Yeah.
But if all of these teams have been within the Russian sphere for the last year, making alliances, getting feedback from judges, right? Growing in political stature, and you've been out of it and known that you're waiting for a green card, how well are you going to be received back in Russia? It was not easy to get them to the Olympics. We also haven't seen how hard do you train when you don't have the motivation of competition versus you do. What does that impact you, right? Who knows? There's so many factors here. But I do think these other teams have had the benefit of competing, and curious to see where that leads everyone. So,
I mean, again, could be an interesting time for them to just improve their basic skating skills, which of course is what's lacking sort of from that team. They have a lot of razzmatazz.
Of course.
Exclusively. So, I mean, if it was just one of drills and edges, and because they have the luxury of time to sort of hone those basic skills, it could be an amazing move. Whether I, at that age, would have had the patience to do that, I don't know.
Well, I did an interview with Belinda, and she, of course, she's so smart at saying things without saying them.
Yeah.
Talking about like flat Choctaws and transitions, she's talking about that Tudbaridze school of skating that I think fans don't often understand until they learn more of the nuances of like, what's a complete skater? Why is Jason Brown getting points when he's not doing quads? This is a sport. It was very difficult to do those turns on deep edges and where the roots of figure skating come from. And I think that's where they could improve. But how much is Terry invested in an ice dancer improving those things versus, when we see her single skaters, what is her worldview on skating, right? That would be the interesting thing.
And quite frankly, the scores have never indicated that they need to address things.
So that'd be interesting if she has a school that is known for being weak in skating skills, and she herself and her daughter are ice dancers where you ostensibly need skating skills to move ahead. do you put the focus there?
Yeah. I mean, again, that's what we think. If you go to a Renee Roca, if you go to a Tracy Wilson, if you go to these people, the allure of working with the ice dancer is your skating skills should be better than anybody else's.
Yeah.
100%. But it always harkens back to that Mishin comment when someone was asking him back in the reign of Tuktamisheva, well, are you going to work on the programs? Are you going to work on the skating skills? And he basically said, well, why would we? What's wrong with those scores? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And nothing was wrong with those scores. From their eyes, they were being rewarded for it, even though we didn't necessarily see what the scores were claiming they saw.
Yeah. I do just say that Belinda talked, and we've heard this from different skaters, that there is a feeling of a more relaxed, happy world going on over the last couple of years, and I think you could feel it at the World Team Trophy. And I was trying to figure out what that is. And I think it goes into that state-sponsored system where certain countries really speak and talk about competition in figure skating like it's a war, right? Like,
yes.
As opposed to personal achievement, right?
And lacks empathy a little bit in those moments for your colleagues and teammates who are in the same boat. If you're sitting there and you see someone fall, I felt these groups have empathy for that because they know that feeling and they want you to do well also. It behooves everyone to have a thrilling competition.
Also like tighter in your upper body, right? When it's life or death. And just a different energy that comes out. It's very exciting to watch, but it's also stressful to watch.
This felt more like a celebration of figure skating instead of some cutthroat, leave it all on the line, do it or don't kind of approach. And I enjoy the joy in figure skating. And even though, you know, I've gone on record several times, I think the hats and the feather boas and Mitch Moyer and big sunglasses, you're like, this is cringe. However, the idea behind it, that it is a celebration and fun, I think is the right sentiment. I just personally... Do you think
Jason Brown was your team captain, though, and he gave you a boa and a hat, and you were in Japan with that big crowd and the excitement? Would you get into it a little bit?
I think I would say, don't give me the boa, give me the little sign. Or give me a little something.
But I think we might be more into it than we let on, but with reason, right?
It would be infectious if you were there and everyone.
You don't want to be the bump on a log on the team, too. Like, you don't want everyone to be, yes, and you to be like...
I'm over it. Yeah, although this makes it tough in these team competition sort of settings, when someone does not do well, it is an awkward kiss and cry when your colleagues are like whooping and hollering and you know you did not deliver.
Yeah.
That's got to be a tough energy. But for instance, when they do the team events in gymnastics, what is that vibe? When you go and
no kiss and cry. Oh, it's fake hugs. Okay, it is fake hugs.
So it's a celebration, but it's not cringy.
Well, no, and it's just different, right? Like you leave and it's just like it's a little. I mean, I think it's always an awkward moment when someone doesn't perform well. What do you say, right? What do you... Because everyone is different, right? Some people want to hear that it's okay. I'm someone that if I made a mistake, I would get annoyed if someone acted like...
You didn't?
Yeah. Because to me, that communicates that you don't think I could do better.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? So I would want just... honest feedback, right? But maybe not from like but from a coach or something like that. Yeah, I would want to not to like catastrophize the situation, but like address the situation and talk about what happened, right? So that's it. But everyone's different, like what you want or need in that moment. So So but I thought it was interesting. Let's start with the men. Mr. Kevin Aymoz, I thought this was interesting because in the past, he has been more inconsistent, right? But maybe signs of an upswing here, right? I was very encouraged to see that he pulled out the short program and a good free here, not perfect, missed the second quad, but we see him, he was a skater that struggled to get one quad in. He was injured and struggled to get the quad in the short program.
Including for the entire fall.
Yeah, and European, right?
Yeah.
And remember, he was doing quad sow in the past. Now he's doing quad toe. So we know that he can do quad sow. He can do quad toe. I don't know how many years. We don't know how many years anyone has left at the top. That's the truth, right? But where he is right now, he looks to be in pretty good form, in pretty good health. I think for the fall, for the Grand Prix, if he could keep a quad in the short program, do at least 2 quads in the free, and then build on that, maybe add the third for later next season, or just skate cleanly, he's in this, right?
And he's taking us on a journey. He's so eclipsed by Jason because Jason is such the skating skills, artistry mascot for skating. However, Kevin is real interesting, and I look forward to his programs every single time. Yes. And I think he's such an important presence in the depth of this field to be such an interesting skater.
That's another thing where algorithms don't lie. When videos of Kevin are shown on Facebook in the same way they were of Vanessa and Morgan, there's something about what they are doing and that view of skating that just translates into shares. And this isn't a nationalism like France is the best in the world type thing, right? It's about the skating. To me, that should be an indication to the ISU of reward more of that.
Yeah, this is more what people want.
This is what people want.
Yeah.
Pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Move in that direction, right?
Yeah.
And because the viewers are actually telling you that, right? You're cutting through noise, right? In these spheres. If he could get that second, I thought he was off. He looked like a little quick in his timing for a lot of things here.
And in some of those cool choreographic moves, like there was a bit of like rushing, like a little bit chasing the music or something like that was happening. But
so when he did that, but I was impressed that he held on to the first quad combo. I thought that was a big win for him. And, he and Sylvia seem to have a mature, more muted reaction with each other after the free.
And maybe that's part of being in front of the team.
Oh.
You cannot be so, so self-serving in the score because it's sort of communal. Yeah.
I mean, that dynamic is just
fascinating.
The best mess, right, of all the sports. So, but I thought it was encouraging to see that here. So,
yeah. And one of the few international coaches to really show up with her skater.
Yes.
We saw a lot of swimming.
What do you think of Jason Brown here? So he, again, following up the World Championships, they've been touring, so they haven't had tons of training time. Roheen came to be in the Kiss and Cry with him here. Good to see Roheen. I missed Tracy, of course.
Of course. I have to say, just such a shallow comment. Roheen looked nice. He looked like really handsome up there, I thought. And it was nice to see him put Jason on the ice. It's kind of a fun connection. And
it's like a fun mix of personalities that I think we don't see a lot because, right? That's an interesting dynamic that, again, there should be a docuseries. I want to see Roheen and Jason working together, right?
Yes, 100%. 100%. I thought it was good here. Obviously, some of the jumps a little tighter than we saw at World, some of the, triple axel moments and things like that. But again, just beautiful skating and him really soaking up that ovation at the end. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting. Obviously, I'm obsessed with Jason. Gorgeous skating, gorgeous skating. Kevin got the crowd a little bit more in this particular event. But that's what we need. I just want a whole event of Jasons and Kevins.
And June's, right? Yeah. But they have that magic. Do you think Jason does this again, or was this a perfect bookend season with these programs?
If he decided that this was it would be a lovely note to go out on. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, what if you do the same thing next? Take the whole fall off.
He may never be in as peak form again, right? We have to just take that out. However, this all seems like extra, right? He's done it all.
Yeah.
He has nothing to prove. No one is counting on him to, right? Like he's just enjoying skating and we're enjoying watching him.
And yet we were able to count on him. Again, this obsession with number of spots, but I mean, he is that solid choice to back up Ilia. I mean, obviously didn't he finish ahead of Ilia in the long here? Yeah. But he's the perfect person to sort of fit that number 2 supportive spot and make sure our,
I think the USFS should pay him a lot of money to continue.
We need him.
Right now, it's not that he's not a competitor, and I don't want to like diminish what he's doing, but it's actually because I'm actually complimenting him. What he's almost serving as an ambassador for the sport. Like it's almost bigger, right, than what he is, like what he represents and what he's doing. And he's skating at his absolute best and he's healthy. So if he can keep doing that, he also is helping, because maybe he's not going to be in this physical condition at this age in 2026, right? We all can't be at our peak forever, right?
Right.
But those boys prove this year, beneath him, coming up, not consistent, not ready.
Not ready.
Chev, Naumov, Luca, Jimmy, Camden, not consistent, not ready. Right now, you have a skater who's basically like one of the top show skaters on the planet,
right,
who's staying in shape and also performing at a couple of competitions. I think that they should pay him to do it again.
Yeah. I'm not ready to let go of it in the mix.
Because those men doing quads will have to work that much harder,
right,
to solidify, to beat Jason, and that's why depth is important.
Agreed.
And in the meantime, no one's mad at watching Jason, right? But
on the contrary, yeah.
Au contraire, if you have Canada and you have that situation with the men where you have Roman Sadovsky, Gogolev, and someone breaking their blade the week of Worlds and not making the free skate, that's a situation that Mitch Moyer may not want to have.
Right.
Jason, how much do you want?
Yeah, name your price. Yeah.
We'll help you with sponsors. We'll get you the shows. You can do whatever you want, honey, okay?
And in this series where like Johnny came into the spotlight and wrote it after the career, and then Adam sort of like took that, I see Jason is only becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he may not be in the running for a medal. Which
you know what?
Never was either.
Buy him an apartment in Tokyo.
Yeah.
All right. Let him train on the Yuzu channel. I mean, Yuzu's still training long programs like every other day. So why not just have Jason just there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would be important for him to stay around.
Yeah. Listen, I'm sure IMG has like a token, work share apartment that they could put him up in. And it could be arranged.
Yeah.
Now, how about Junhwan Cha? Because he is a skater that is really, he's in the middle of having a moment, okay? And I think that this is fantastic.
He's solidified.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, we have always seen what seemed like limitless potential there early on. He was just working out the consistency of it. Mm-hmm. But to me, there's just a musicality. There was a swagger a bit more at this event, which I really appreciated. And I think it was just a solidification that he's here.
He took advantage of his momentum that he has built, right? Through an okay 4 continents, great worlds. Here he really, obviously a pop on the triple axel, but I thought that this was really encouraging for next season for him.
Yeah.
And really solidifying him. I think even his potential in Korea, his visibility, his recognizability will improve. And that's a country that has been into figure skating in the past. And I think that June, Haein, the dance team, these are all teams that could help build figure skating in Korea, because at the time that Kim Yuna was such a phenomenon there and built skating, which obviously these skaters were influenced by, but when she stopped competing, they didn't have someone to replace her, right? And this is where when skating is big because of more than one skater, right? That this can help build that sport. And I think that that's really critical.
A huge moment for them to, as a team, have placed second.
Yes.
This is, you know, this is huge.
Yeah.
This is huge. And so I hope, I mean, that they continue to work to cultivate more in the dance and pairs programs.
Yes, of course.
Because even as we saw with Japan, like obviously Japan knew that they were very strong in singles and needed to sort of figure something out. And I think they did that by enlisting the help of Bruno in the pairs department. But of course, it's a pair. It'd be great to see them cultivating just a few at a time.
Yeah.
Just again to create that depth. And same with the ice dance. We sort of had this Daisuke Tim Coletto thing, but I would love for them to almost approach 3 or 4 teams at once.
Yeah, talk to Marin Honda about coming back. We saw that dance video. She has the potential, and they need some more pairs. Yeah, to keep pushing that.
Yeah, because again, they did amazing work in creating this pair, but again, they run the risk of being a one and done if they're not building underneath it, obviously.
Of course, having a world champion, one would imagine that would encourage people to keep or consider entering that discipline, right? When you see that success is possible, you're like, oh, right?
Yeah, that there's great honor in it. Yeah.
Well, think about like ice dance, right? The commentators or the reporters used to be like, well, ice dance was the dinner break of US nationals. But then when the US started winning, they started watching that event.
But even as we did that, as Tanith, for instance, really came on and started placing in a way, they were immediately followed by Meryl and Charlie, which was so important that we didn't have that gap. And that would be the fear, is if when the Japanese pair retires, inevitably at some point, that there may be that like sort of void for a while, where what was so helpful in the US dance is we never really took a break. They had worked to have someone right behind the next team.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it's important, you know, for these sports to grow and for these countries to keep getting better. And it makes that team event that once seemed like such a joke to everyone more interesting and competitive, because what happens now is that there really aren't that many teams that are strong across the disciplines. But as this changes and more disciplines grow, especially in Korea and Japan and Italy, all of a sudden there are more teams with something to say across, and that becomes more interesting for viewers. If it's
and one of the great successes, I think, of introducing the team event at the Olympics and the World Team Trophy is it is cultivating depth through disciplines in many countries that didn't consider it before, I think.
I do wish that it would be the same rules from one to another, because it's a little, and I know that this is for TV, right, for rules, but I think they should either allow another skater to do the events, the singles events at the Olympics, or have one skater swap in and out here, right? Like, I think that should be just so that the rules are the same. That way, if someone is going to say, well, they're the reigning team champion, world team champions, well, then that becomes more real, right? Like, that becomes more of a thing of like, well, actually, if we look back to the world team, this skater helped them get the gold medal, right? Because the rules are different, it doesn't equate, right? It's just.
Would you prefer the Olympic version of the team event with those rules, or would you prefer the rules that they have at World Team Trophy?
You know, I always like to see more skaters. But I think it's realistic. Or at least if they made it at the World Team Trophy, the points to count, that you had to indicate who would count, right? Because the reality of this is they're not going to add more skaters to the Olympics, right? So we have to understand that, and we have to be realistic. Even though I would love to see more skaters at the Olympics, we fight to get that single skater for the country to round out the field, right? So they're not going to add more.
Right.
So if you think about that, I think that they should have, even if you want to have the skaters for TV, right? You should have to designate, well, Jason's points will count for the short, Ilia's will count for the free. Even if they're both going to compete, that way, the points at least add up and you can adjust, and then you can have some sort of, you know, history and consistency and see that event through time. That's because they're not gonna just add it. It's the same way we don't see synchro being added to the, like they're not gonna just add more.
Okay.
In terms of that real estate. So anyway, yeah. But what did you think of the Japanese pair here? Interesting to see kind of the change in attitude. I mean, not compare to see Alexa and Brandon judged definitely higher here than they were at the World Championships in comparison to the Japanese team. What'd you think?
I mean, it was interesting. Of course, she made sure to land that throw.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
right, like that's a competitor.
Yeah. Some of those ways you do like seeing like another chance, another stab at it, you know. And they really successfully did that moment. I would imagine the fatigue emotionally for them was immense here. I would imagine the pressure going into Worlds was so immense. Winning Worlds was so immense. I personally would have found it probably very hard if I were them to have been focused for this. And it is a weird matchup sometimes because you're sort of like, prove it. I think they did a lovely job, but it didn't quite have the magic I've seen in other points during the season, I would say.
Yeah, interesting to see kind of like two rivalries within the pair event here playing out. I do think with,
I'm sorry, Dave. Can we take a brief second? I have to pee so bad.
Wait, so we were talking about rivalries emerging.
Sorry. I drank too much.
It's all right. So, at least I'm going to keep it in because people always think like, oh my God, he said something shady, right? Oh my God, what did he say?
No, you guys, like as like a singer, I'm like obsessed with hydration, especially when I'm also caffeinating. And so I drink like 18 gallons of water and then I'm like, great, let's sit down and talk about skating. Terrific, what could go wrong?
I said something so shady about that Japanese pair.
Yeah, as if, please, say it all on the air if we have something to say.
I mean, definitely the opening 3-jump combo was not it in the free skate. And
which is interesting because she did much better on the triple sow. And so I'm curious, I can't recall like if Megan ever mentioned when they're training, does she have better success with the sow in general? Because they put the toe in the short as well.
Right. But in the past, she had a toe axle that they've really fought. So that's just not her comfortable job.
Yeah. So for the short especially, I'm intrigued that they didn't do the sow. But obviously they know they have a reason.
Right, but at the same time, doing it in both programs forces you to get better at it.
Yeah.
So
what I was intrigued by, because you're talking about this rivalry, which is really great to see because both teams have such interesting things. I love this, especially this version of Alexa and Brandon's programs. The lifts were just so magical. Some of those entries and exits and her positions, like, and what I love is how nice both teams are landing their throws. In the fall, it seemed like a lot of the pairs were struggling with the throws. And it was just so lovely. There's nothing more magic to me than a well-landed throw jump.
Alexa has become a throw queen, right? She is really,
it's magnificent. But in talking about the rivalry, I hope it's not over. They have intentionally been very vague that they have not made a decision yet. And it was a very emotional free skate. And the end of it could have signified, as a viewer that has no information about this, but just as a viewer, I was like, uh-oh, is this like a enjoying the moment because it's the last? Because I hope it is. Yeah,
I think it is.
I hope it's not.
So, yeah, they've said that this was going to be their last season, and unless something changes, but we know that Chris moved to Chicago.
Well, they keep saying in the press though that they have not officially discussed it.
Yeah, well, Jonathan, come on.
Keeping intrigue, I suppose. But
what did Alexa do when she skated off the ice at her last Olympic moment?
I don't remember.
She ran her fingers over the Olympic ice.
That's right.
What did she do at the end of this program here? She ran her fingers over the World Team Trophy competitive ice. Okay. And then the hug to Chris with the crying and the...
Nice to see Chris there, but then you also saw what, again, this is me making it up. These are just observations as a viewer. Brandon looked blank in that kiss and cry. And again, in my own weird speculation,
He might be a man in his feelings that realizes that his career is,
could potentially be done. And they're at such a high level right now and they're thriving. And of course you want to leave when you're on the top and all this sort of stuff. But I was like, it was how Scott Hamilton used to describe his like Olympic podium moment, is that sort of like, oh gosh, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
This is over. He sort of registered that a little on the face, I thought, in the kiss and cry.
I was just talking to someone about graduating where they're like, wait, it's like, I'm like, yeah, that it's actually not so.
Yeah, next chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so all of that. Yeah, I think that's what was happening.
Yeah. I had wished it wasn't. Like in my heart of hearts, I like secretly hope that maybe if the training becomes too intense, would they consider like a Jason schedule?
This is why I think we need those pro competitions. We see Yuzu at his absolute best, and people said, well, he's not going to come back to ISU. Well, he has shown us that he can create whatever he wants, and he clearly still likes to train. I would love to see him compete in an event with Jason. And then you have to wonder, does Shoma want to continue competitively at this level, or would he be interested in skating in that venue?
And imagine the programs and the kind of material they could come up with when they're given more freedom that way.
And Nathan Chen skated very well at Ice Chips last weekend, not his absolute, Olympic standard, but you think like that's someone that you could, entice to do an interesting kind of competition. Alexa and Brandon being another one. I think, there is a space for people that are very good, that are going to do something else with their lives, but maybe get them intrigued, and make it worth their while to do something. But I'm intrigued what Chock and Bates will do. To me, that's the curious one.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, ending on a big high, obviously.
A team that maybe no one thought would be world champion before this season and sequence of events.
Shows you it's a long season, because what seemed so certain in the fall certainly got turned upside down and was solidified here.
Yeah.
Because also it's interesting to see how the judges respond to the momentum from Worlds.
Right. And is it justified? This is where I think the world records are ridiculous. If you're going to tell me that they deserve to be that much higher than Virtue and Moyer and Papadakis and Cizeron, I'm going to say Marie-France, please. Okay, yeah. Please. You have collected so many countries and have so many positive relations that whether you want to or not, everyone is reacting favorably within, group thinking, right? And this has gotten out of control, which has nothing to do with their performance. Their performance was great and the best here, right? The scoring is a separate.
Right.
Okay.
They not have won without a world record, but it seems interesting, especially at some point in IJS, sort of in those like 2014 to 18 period, that everyone was so eager to give personal best, season best, world, like that they wanted us to get excited by the skyrocketing scores, and it just doesn't. It doesn't carry the weight I think they think it does to a viewer.
I mean, in a moment, right? But it just frustrates everyone else, but it's something to talk about, right? Yeah. Listen, there was a fluff piece once saying that Corbel and Dean shouldn't have had all sixes for Bolero. So, people are always
Disagree.
What I'm saying is there are people that are always going to get upset, right? Anyway, but you have to think.
But I have to go with that Corbel and Dean for a second. Given that it received all 6.0s, we then look to Bolero as sort of the quintessential amazing program of that era, and that's true. Whereas, are you going to show this as the world record and be like, this is the ultimate in ice stands? And it's a wonderful skate. It's again, like you're saying, it's not about them, but are you now putting this as the thing that everyone will now try to emulate?
Well, I just read that Nadia Comaneci book about her and the secret police files, how she was spied on like Katarina Witt, and someone actually, read all of her files and translated and wrote something. And I went and watched some of her, videos, and there are people that debate whether or not she should have gotten a 10. But think about what that 10 did for the sport. And at the same time, there are always going to be the people that are going to pick it apart, decades later. So anyway. I think for Chock and Bates, I'd be interested to see if they continue or not. On one hand, they are at the absolute top. There doesn't seem to be another team domestically ready to take their place. And in the world, perhaps not another team right now that seems like they are going to fit. Now they are probably, you don't know their health status, right? But they seem like they are at the top of their ability. Well, do you do year by year? Do you do another year? Do you want to have children? Do you want to, obviously there are different ways you could adopt, do many different things, but you start to wonder, what they want to do. It's set up that Worlds are in Montreal where they train. Well, then you're like, well, then the next Worlds are in the US.
Right.
And if the US isn't quite ready, will they incentivize them to continue? And do they want to continue? And what do they want to do when they're done with their careers? I don't think that we've heard that.
Right.
So
again, as you mentioned, Worlds in Montreal next year, and that could be incentive for Piper and Paul. But again, Piper and Paul, the judges just gave them the boot this half of the season.
I didn't think that their rhythm dance looked as good here. Did you notice that?
Well,
to me, they look tighter.
Technically, and especially compared to the Italians, where we're talking about maybe the Italians don't make the same overall effect dramatically or energetically to an audience. They are sharp.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. If you are looking
mm-hmm.
element to element, they are doing some really fast spins, some very interesting entrances. And it may not collectively add up to such a moving moment, but they do stand to outscore Piper and Paul in those technical elements.
I think that if you were Piper and Paul, you have to look at, do you want to do a home Worlds because you want to win, or do you want the experience of skating your best in front of a home crowd?
And most likely winning a medal.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, and what does that mean? And do you enjoy it and enjoy the process? Because if they're not from the IM dance school next year, I don't see why you would continue to win. Think that you're going to win at a home Worlds. The people that they train with in junior did not win Worlds in Calgary at Junior Worlds, right? That didn't help them.
What they have? My Czech team was
they won the final, okay, but
because the Czech team let them with that mistake.
Is the Czech team going to go to Montreal? That would be the killer.
Oh yes, I agree.
Because to me, I'm looking at what team has next, right? Like what team could win Worlds?
The Czech team.
What team could win the Olympics?
The Czech team.
I think so. I don't see anyone in that IM stable of 57 teams that has every ingredient needed to win. I see 80%, 85%, right? That Czech team, if they went to Montreal, well,
they're in it. They're in it. Well, and quite frankly, among those younger teams, depending on what happens with Russia,
mm-hmm.
I think it's Krylova's team. I could see a situation where the Olympic comes down between Krylova's team and the Czech team.
And the Korean team.
I mean, that they had such potential here. And I have to be honest, I was ready to sort of skip over them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you encouraged me to watch them, and like, oh my gosh, their straight line lift, the entrance into it, she is magic.
Yeah, and they got a new program, and then they had to extend their program in a couple of weeks here. Okay, so
it was a lovely, promising team with some very cool entrances and moves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would imagine they're going to work with him a little bit to sort of rise to her performance ability, which is outstanding.
Hana Lim is a star. Okay, that is clear. And
she's clutching the heart at the end of the dance. Like, I was like, this girl has the thing.
Yes. So she's Hana Lim, she's Haein Lim, if you go with her alternative name. But listen, I think that intriguing, and I would be interested to see how successful they could become. Seeing this is obviously a huge opportunity. It reminds me of when Gracie Gold went to that World Team Trophy in 2012, and that really boosted her career. You know, for them to get this opportunity, I think was huge, great for Korea, and it showed that they are among the top.
Yes, because although yes, they were 6 out of 6. You look at the scores; it was not a distant 6.
No.
I mean, they were 5 points something, or less than 5 points from Daisuke.
Yeah.
You know, 6 from the French. I mean, they're going to be in it.
And how long do you think Daisuke is going to go for?
I mean, this was a lovely moment.
Yes.
You know, to be on home ice and to watch that crowd just go for it. They added that choreographic spin at the end, which is so cool. Like, yeah, I hope he continues for the sake of ice dance in Japan another season, because again, I loved their.
Or could he do the Yuzu show gift and also add to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of people that have a home wherever they want to skate, right? You just, I don't know. I don't think that they're going to win medals compared to these younger teams that are coming up, the Czech team, the Korean team, the Canadian team at Junior Worlds, the British team, right? Like those are the teams that you see like rising over the next number of years.
Yeah.
So it comes down to what are they interested in?
Yeah.
Because it is a grind, right? This is, yes, it is so fun at the end of the season. And you're like, yes, of course I'm going to do it again. And then you're like, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, he still improves so much every season. He becomes more secure in the lifts, more secure in some of the dance spins. So you think they're kind of just getting started, but obviously one is aware. I mean, he's been competing forever.
Yeah. What is his body like? That's what you kind
of. You almost want to say, can you just keep going until we've got Marin ready?
Yeah. You wonder what will happen there, but I thought of the dance overall, good event. Yeah, to me, the men were still the event here. Matteo Rizzo, I thought, was so good.
A nice moment for him. Yeah.
I think he needs better music for next year if he wants to move up to that next group of men.
And hopefully, like these scores and this placement here show him the judges will go with you.
He and I have a similar thing where we're very serious in terms of skating, and he needs to continue to work on his face and performance ability.
Because the blade ability, especially in like the choreographic sequence and the step sequences, you realize there's some real skating skills there that I don't even know that they always take full advantage of in some of those programs. Because it's one of those things like when I'm really looking and studying for it, you see that there is tremendous quality in it, but they have yet to sort of do a program that really forces you to be like, whoa, look at those skating skills.
Yeah, Kimi Rapon posted a photo with David Wilson, and David Wilson's good friend Sandra Bezic was in town, although Sandra said it was just a picture.
Okay.
Oh, she annoyed me earlier today. I'll tell you that in a second.
Okay.
We've had it, Sandra, right?
Have we? I don't know. I didn't know that was possible.
But you think about it, I think that Matteo Rizzo is someone that could visit David Wilson and his good friend Sandra, because with him, he was great this season. But in terms of competing against the Kevins and the Junes every time, obviously he needs consistency. But I think that the quality of his presentation is going to be correlated with the quality of the music. And I just don't think that Bruno Mars was interesting or had enough variety. And
had enough of an identity. Like what the thing is, you remember Kevin's program and the vibe and Jason's and Junhwan's and all this sort of stuff. But his was a bit more of a general approach. And I think he's capable of those kinds of transformative programs. I just want to see him do it. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because I thought, I wonder what would happen if he went to the cricket club or something. Like you talk about like how often they can be such excellent finishers. And that's basically where he's at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one that I think could have a part-time residency in the cricket club, who I know that they went there for a couple of weeks, Kazuki Tomono.
What funny you mentioned that, because also I thought for as fast and energetic and amazingly perky as he can be, he seems to jump better when he's not in that zone.
Yeah.
So I think there's a real art to sort of figuring out how to deliver the difficult content in a more subdued moment and then let him burst free at the end.
Jonathan, that's why La La Land was perfect for him, right? Because the jumps happened in da 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 da, right? And then at the end it was dun 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 dun, and you got everything.
And
right?
even with Fledermaus, but that and someone as musical as he is, you're going to internalize that sort of rapid fire momentum inside of you when the music is doing the same.
And the key for him is not rushing the 3-turn entrance on, or the right arm entrance on the sao. And when he pulls it too quick, he's always off in the air on that sao count in the quad.
And that, the music is asking him to be too quick.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I thought about some of Keegan's music in the past as well. Like there's such a drive and a frenzy underneath you that your body's going to take it on. Yeah.
That's why I think that they should have like you know how people are part-time with IM? Maybe Misha could be part-time with Tracy, right? And, oh, Misha, you're so talented. Tracy could say, and then we could talk about what music we're doing for.
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be kind of like the next coaching moment with Misha figuring that out with him.
Right.
Because it's a little too like.
Because I understand, it makes sense to me on paper why they would have chosen Fledermaus. It's a charming classical piece. It does have that energy to it, but yeah.
And the other reason we need to go there is he is a wonderful skater. The one area he needs to work on to get maximum GOE points and components, extension. Leg. He is a great skater. He bends his legs more than some of the top men when you look at Kevin and Jason, right? And if he stretched that leg, just imagine how good his line would look because he has that potential.
Yeah, he has it in the core for sure. Yeah.
And that's where you have Tracy's edge class, but she loves Pilates and that core strength and working on that reformer. I'm pushing that toe and, all of that makes a difference. And that little bit in a field in Japan that is so deep where you have Shoma and you have Yuma who was working on the figures this last week.
Yeah.
Love that, right? Don't know how he can jump, but he was working on the figures and I was like, yes, okay. Yeah. I mean, what did Renee Rocco tell us off camera about the secret to improving in skating is?
Always have to drill edges. Always, always, always. Yeah.
So, and I think you see the skaters that drill elements versus the skaters who drill edges.
Yeah.
Right? So I think if Kazuki, because he has the right mix of personality and talent and athleticism, and he's like right there. And this was huge for him to get to go. Like, we didn't know if he was going to make the team for the World Championships, right? Like he was on the bubble, right? And he made it and he got to go and he skated well. And then he got to go to the World Team Trophy and skated well. You start to see and expect yourself to be different because you get comfortable in this space. It was several years before he was really at that level, right? He made it in 2018, then he had a difficult period, then he's been on the rise. So I would like to see him more.
Rise when some of his teammates were given similar big opportunities and sort of wilted in the moment.
Yeah.
From Sota to here, Shun Sato had a tough outing. You saw in being that just underneath Shoma Yuma category, he has surged forward among that group.
He visibly loves skating and visibly loves performing. And I think that comes through in your career and your interest, right? In Yuma working the figures, right? Like, I think that tends to win out, not every time, but tends to look at Yuka Sato, still skating, still loving it, still working on her edges, right? So I think that something like that does win out at the end of the day. And I think we'll see him. As far as Daniel Grassel, who working with Terry, he's getting another program from Benoit. I love how he told us that, Benoit was able to tell Terry about him as a skater. Although if she didn't have eyes or Instagram or any knowledge, she really wanted to check in. Benoit did work with Diana and Gleb. So you see that relationship and what is that about politically and moving on, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, more of the same with him. It would be interesting to know what's really going on with him physically, technically, mentally right now, because it's been a season of him not being his best. Is this burnout? What is going on? So
something seems chaotic about it.
Yeah, and then Adam Siohim Fa, interesting is that he didn't go for all of the difficult quads that he's been training, but he had such consistency at the start of the season and then tried to put the difficult content in training. And then we see him put it here and unsuccessful. And you wonder if it was just too soon, if he needed
the quad Lutz, especially in the free, was much closer than I thought it might have been. That at least is one of those elements that, like, when you see people try really big risky elements, sometimes you're like, is that working for you in practice? Because that looks far from ready. His looks just about there. So at World Team Trophy, it makes sense, maybe try some of it. But I just can't help but wonder, as we mentioned in the World Show, if sort of devoting so much time to new elements when you still had Worlds to do, sort of threw a wrench in things. Was that more of a summer project?
Right. And also learning to compete is a skill too, as much as everything else is. And he was learning how to compete and how to skate cleanly and win, right? And that's another skill. And did they push it too early? Which again is like, that's that expertise of why you have Tracy, right? It's not necessarily to teach you the quad Lutz, but it's the strategy of when you put that element.
We're trying it, how we're trying it, yeah.
And that's the psychological work. And that's, why
that's
you have
a tough one. He was down. After, I mean, come on, that Europeans win was such a huge moment for him, and then was not able to ride that momentum. And so that was one of those moments when you see someone who had great expectations sitting in the kiss and cry with his teammates cheering, that it was heavy on him, it seemed.
It's interesting to watch Adam versus Kevin. Hopefully we'll see them one day both skate well at the same competition, but you can see that they push each other to get that.
100%.
That Kevin puts in the second quad when he sees what Adam is doing on Instagram, and that's fascinating to me.
Because I even remember one of my favorite Kevin quotes a long time ago was we were covering French nationals before Adam was really in the mix, and he got some outrageously large score, and Sylvia was so thrilled for him, and he was like, "Oh please, it's just nationals, so of course they were going to give me that score," or something like that. And then I thought, that is not the case anymore, because there really is another factoring man competing against him at that nationals. And I think competition begets better skating. Yeah.
The one thing about France that I'm questioning is with this world of ice dance and how quick that Czech team can improve and whether or not they go to Montreal or try to, is there any way Papadakis and Cizeron would come back?
Maybe they just needed a break away.
Sometimes
reset.
Watching their show program in Art on Ice, they're still the best, right? They're away, but they're not dead, right? And could they come back for a Montreal Worlds, for an American Worlds, right? Like Tessa and Scott did, right? I think they needed a break. That is
fair enough, yeah.
But I still think that they would be the best.
I agree.
They're that good. Right. And maybe they want to. I think their Olympics was a nail biter. It took years off of everyone's life, but maybe they would also want to go out on a big note. You never know, right? Like stranger things could have happened. Maybe they're laughing and hearing about this, but they are that good. Or they're going to do something like Yuzu thing, but not seeing them be as visible. We saw that Guillaume was choreographing. So you start to see about the next iteration in his, but without this like pro arena really being as strong, wondering where they're going to be, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about Haein Lee and Kaori here? What's your kind of take on this? This is an interesting rivalry that's sort of
common. Well, and Haein is definitely riding the judges' momentum from Worlds too. They were just happy to just put her right in that mix, which she obviously deserved to be here, but it shows you with that kind of from 4 continents to worlds to here, they are ready to just accept her with open arms. And what I saw was a different sense of self. She came out like a champion.
She made me like a song I hated before.
Yeah.
So,
and
Gracie Cole skated to that Phantom piece in 2015, right? And I hated it, right? I thought it sounded like a grandma singing, right? But you could also tell that Gracie hated it, right? Like,
yeah. Gracie hated it the most. Yeah.
Right? It wasn't helping her, right? It wasn't elevating her. So we all hated it, right? And it was torturous for everyone, right? Haein skated like she loved it. And I was like, maybe that piece isn't so bad that it's in my head.
And there is big orchestral moments and, the thrilling organ and all this sort of stuff. And actually timely because it's closing on Broadway it's big news here. So actually the timing of it was kind of interesting. But what I saw was just total command of the ice, totally at ease in her body, totally just carrying the air of a champion around her from the minute she just skated out. And I was like, she just needed that Worlds.
She needed it.
It changed her entire perspective and you just view it differently.
Then you see her working on the triple axel, right? And we had seen her land it this summer. This one looked a little cute-ish, but it's close. Yeah. And then you see, what is that going to do with Kaori? Because I think Kaori will continue, but has Kaori maxed her, or where does Kaori have to improve? And I think a couple of things. I think Kaori's getting to that point where she has really interesting programs compared to what she did before. Like this has grown so much, right? Like she went from the Matrix to the Woman program to these 2 fabulous programs. And which one you like better? I think the short is really the moment, although I think that the free really taught her to stretch and take up space and time. She's learning how to skate as the champion, right? And here she looked a little exhausted. And it looked like she spent,
understandably so. That this was a tiring season for her, I am sure of it. Yeah.
Well, I would imagine that if she is to continue, I know Paulina would want her jumps in the correct edges. I don't know if that's going to happen at this point in her career, right? Realistically, right? So funny. I got a text from Melissa Sisney being like, Paulina's really into those correct edges. Listen to her podcast.
Mirai Nagasu called her out on it.
What did Mirai say? I saw
well, she's just like, Paulina, I don't know why you're so finicky about this. Like, are you not watching the overall skating? It was a fascinating conversation between the 2.
Mirai has opinions.
Yeah. Yeah.
She coaches. I skated on sessions with her this year. Actually, the first time I put my program full run through, because I was getting it pieced and then I was up in Boston and I tried my 2 axles, Mirai was there. And I was just like, just please don't fall in front of Mirai.
That's funny.
Especially there, because at that rink, like you have to wear like the vest or it's the whole kit and caboodle. So I'm like, oh God, okay, yeah. Like let's just not do that, right? Yeah. I didn't die in front of Mirai, so yeah.
Thumbs up. Okay.
But anyway, no, I like to hear that. And yes, so I think Kaori working on obviously she needs, I think, the elements the same because she skates with such command. And then really the weak link this year, and we've focused on Kaori getting that triple, and then all of a sudden, when she was so focused on the triple, the Sal and the loop started to have a moment mid-season where they were scary. Maybe keep doing that triple loop, put it in if you want to. We've overlooked Kaori's spins for a minute, and it looks like she has as well. Okay.
Got it. Yeah, that's a fair
You could put a little more attention, a little more love and care to the spins. You can't work on everything all at once. It's time for Kaori to just work on the spins. We're
well, and I'll be intrigued. Just like what's interesting is, again, because we've been watching all the same programs since August or whatever that was, some even sooner than that, I forget to take into account they're noticing all this too. But there's no, they can't really apply so much new until now the summer comes. Even with these programs, I'm intrigued what they feel they have learned from these programs and how they will choose to proceed for next season.
Oh, that's why I'm mad at Sandra. Yes. Okay.
Tell me.
Sandra did the thing. What was okay, you're an overachiever. What is the meanest thing a teacher could tell you when you have an essay or paper and you're trying to gauge like how long or in depth to make the assignment? When you ask the teacher, like, about how long are you thinking? What is the worst?
How long it needs to be?
Does that not keep you up at night with like that feeling in your stomach where you want to throw up and vomit and have diarrhea at the same time?
Are you looking for 1 page? Are you looking for 15? Like, yeah.
I said, Sandra.
I guess in some ways it's about achieving the project instead of what is the message of the paper.
Right, but that could mean very many things. That could mean 2 nights. That could mean a week of an assignment, right? Like, come on. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I asked Sandra if I should keep my program because I only performed it once, and it was very lovely, and it developed me as a skater. But I'm also moving on from this year in my life, and I'm also improving still. And I thought, should I get a new program or keep it the one that I have? You should do whatever you're inspired to do.
And you know what? Actually, now as an educator in the arts, I agree with the sentiment because I think it has to come from your gut, whether or not doing this old program feels like living in the past and you can't apply some of now the new skating things you have learned into that, or if that gives you the confidence because you already know that program and you can thrive within something and continue to make it better.
I see the strengths of both, Jonathan, and I am at like 51-49.
Okay, well then go with 51. Because
I always go back to it if we need to. This is what I'm thinking, right? Like that's what, yeah.
I notice, especially, young opera singers, we always have these audition packages of 5 arias. So
we love Sandra. We're fine. Okay.
Of course. But it's because she's being so profound. She like hit the nerve. And so
she really knows how to. If you talk to Sandra about life, oh my God. Okay.
Well, but that all makes sense to me. And it's so holistic and hippy dippy in the best of ways. But then when you're looking for just black and white answers and like, functional stuff, sometimes it can be very frustrating. And these students will come to me and they're like, what are my 5 arias supposed to be? And I'm like, if I dictate to you what your 5 arias should, I can point you in the direction of things that I think will be very effective for you. But if you don't feel it with your heart, it doesn't matter what I say. I could give you the perfect piece, but if you're not jiving with it and it doesn't inspire you, it's going to fall flat. And if you are completely inspired by a piece of music that I can't stand, but you sell it like crazy, who am I to say not to do it? No. I think it does have to come from that person that just wants to share whatever it is. What piece will make you, when you skate out to the middle, think, wait till you see this?
Well, that's what we need from Isabeau, okay?
100%.
Because for me, it looks like her mother and her coach and her grandmother have just like put everything on this girl, the music, the costuming and the stuff, but we're losing who she is.
Right.
Which when she came up as such a vibrant and she did the kisas, and then even the Swan Lake there was a feeling of her.
Especially the Swan Lake, yeah.
This stuff feels more put on her, especially the free.
Yeah.
I just want to see more freedom, more skating.
I want to see something that lights the spark in her eye when that music starts. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think in many ways, she should really pick that music.
Yeah.
What music do you want to hear every day? And what music is going to make you excited to go out and share it with an audience? Because she has that thing, but that special artistic quality, she has that ability to command the ice with her movement, was lost a little bit in this material this season.
Free was painful for me all season to get
through.
Painful. And I love that music instrumentally, but for a free.
Not for her. I'm sorry. When I think of the beauty and the qualities of her skating, that's not the music that's the best vehicle for it. I want to see her go full-blown ballerina.
And I want to see Yelim Kim skate like she did here, but maybe fewer times because she just looks exhausted throughout the season because they have to compete so much.
She had an emotional journey. She was thriving in some moments and crashing. And I think she probably learned a lot from this season. And I hope
the Federation learned.
Free skate was the way to end this season to propel her and motivate her for next season. Because if the free skate here had been an implosion like it has been at other points, in key moments, I think it could really take the wind out of your sails and be hard to motivate any summer training. But I hope you saw the emotional release the minute it was over. This season was hard for her. And and just see the weight lifted off her shoulders then when she was rooting for Haein in the kiss and cry, and you saw her like, I was like, oh my gosh, the weight of the season has finally lifted off of this young woman's shoulders, and it was nice to see.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for Mai Mihara, you could just see long season, right?
And I think we did a good job at, for the most part, delivering quality. Yes, I feel with different skates, she could have ended up on that podium at Worlds, and I'm sure she's disappointed it didn't go the way she wanted. But the overall consistency and presence in this season for her was remarkable and very long-lived.
Yeah. And I thought Amber improved a lot this season, but I think for Amber, I don't think it's the on-ice work. And I think they have to look at, is the focus on the triple axel helping or hurting, right? I think it's kind of her identity a little bit. But if you're not landing it, is there too much emphasis? Or go to a coach or a summer environment that's going to make you, and do you find yourself in Colorado in that oppressive environment, right? Or
at this stage, as an adult kind of, you know, and like someone who's trying to take ownership, again, to me,
send her to like Christine Ness or put her with Ravi for like a couple of months, just like in an individual environment.
Yeah.
Someone that's going to make her train, but also working on the big picture.
And maybe explore some different kind of approaches to the material. Because again,
I would like her to not be weepy for the whole 4 minutes.
Right. And she's a powerful skater with great energy and can have great attack. Let the music inspire that. Let the music complement that.
Because she is a grade A talent. So, and she has made improvements this year.
Find her niche yet. She's not like kind of settled in yet.
Well, what was your moment of the World Team Trophy?
Oh gosh, it's always June's quad sow. Yeah. I don't know how it can't be.
His quads have become the preeminent quads in figure skating of how they should be done. I have to agree.
Timed with that opening orchestral Michael Jackson music and in the James, it is beyond perfect placement for a jump like that. And the distance and speed he gets out of it is just sensational.
Oh, we forgot to talk about the two pairs because we had the bathroom break. The other rivalry in between this, sorry. Sarah Conti against Deanna. And this is interesting to me. Okay, because Sarah Conti, oh my God, I'm blanking on his name, Conti and Machi, right? They have the absolute like fast, smooth skating skills and zero complex transitions, okay? They are crossovers, but the judges... Nicolo. Sorry. Everyone just already posted here, you idiot. Anna and Max, they go for the complexity, but they aren't always rewarded for it. And I think it's about the balance, and because I believe that Deanna and Max have higher quality skating. I believe that they are the better team. I believe that they are not as young and fresh, right? But that they have the bigger qualities. I think for Deanna and Max, maybe we didn't express this in the right way on the last show, but I think for them, it's about finding the balance. And I think it's and it's every skater, right? But finding the balance for them between everything that they do well and the consistency, right? So for them, I think it's that opening 3-jump combo. What is it going to be? And is it going to be successful every time? And then where to put the sow in? Because the one thing I noticed is that Deanna and Max go for that sow late in the program. Now, that's a well-balanced program. Absolutely. 2 text, read the rules, boom. And if you can do it, good. They did do it here, which was
they wanted. So difficult. Yeah.
They did land it. It wasn't perfectly clean, but that was a huge step for them this season, although they have landed it in many past seasons, right? But this season, for all of the struggles, it was harder, right? And they were working on improving other things. The Italians do it early. Not a well-balanced program. Don't have the transitions, and the judges give them the points.
Right.
I do think that Deanna and Max are judged harsher. I think as soon as they make a mistake, the judges go, well, they are older, right? Like, are we going to believe in them? Because judges want to be right, right? Yeah. But I do think that they have inherently more quality. But I think for them, it's going to be about finding that right balance of elements and what is going to look the most spectacular.
Okay, this is like going to be a dumb analogy, but I'm going to try it anyway. Have you ever been on your smartphone and you're trying to navigate a website? Mm-hmm. It's so irritating because it's like so like claustrophobic and small and nitpicky, and it's just so much easier to go to your computer where it's just like a bigger, broader picture. And that's a little bit what I get between the Italians and Diana, is they are so complicated and so sophisticated, a lot of their smaller, intricate moments, but it sort of makes my eye go like this. There's something so small and detailed about it, and I'm kind of missing sort of like a bigger, broader kind of approach to it. And I think that sometimes the broader look seems like it lacks the complexity, but I almost wish they would let go of some of the complexity and moment to just sort of own some sweepier moments in the programs.
I think ultimately this free skate missed sweepier moments musically.
And that's what I love in a pair. Like Alexa and Brandon, for instance, they look enormous on the ice. Like they take up so much space and their patterns are big and the movements are big and open as opposed to smaller and complex.
Well, I think for next season, it'll be interesting. I think the Italians will do another boring standard warhorse. Like, come on, we have seen how many Italian skaters and dance teams give us paint by numbers. This team is doing that.
Yeah, okay.
I think Deanna and Max will give us something interesting, interesting elements. I just hope that they give us something sweep, with more sweep for the free music.
Yes, that encourages bigger pictures instead of.
She gave us lots of pictures, but the music didn't give us feeling. I didn't feel their free skate this year throughout. And I think for them, that's the next thing to add, is that emotional hook for her to cry, for us to cry and relax.
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference between showing you performance and emotion and actually emoting it because you feel it. Mm-hmm. And so it seems also very planned, you know, a lot of these moments. And I kind of want that reckless emotional abandon from a program because I think they can do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But I agree. Moment of the championship for me, Junhwan Cha's quads, Alexis throws.
Yes. Excellent point. Excellent point.
Hold it edge and look sexy, everyone. Bye now.